Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second session in American English Live Teacher Development Series 11. We're so excited that each of you are here with us today. My name is Kate, and I'll be joined along with my colleague behind the scenes, Heather, who will be serving as moderator to help answer your questions and respond to your comments during today's session. Let's begin today with these wonderful audience comments from our first webinar in Series 11. So Balnur in Kazakhstan said, the session was impeccable. So many new techniques and activities to use I could not even imagine. Thanks, American English, for broadening our horizons and making classes more entertaining. Wonderful. And Teresita said, this session will help me in future online classes because it provided me several ideas regarding how to motivate students to participate in the sessions. Awesome. Great comment. Thank you. And finally, this session was very helpful to us. I learned how to make learning three-dimensional from Adele in the Philippines. So thank you so much for all those wonderful comments. We love to see teachers actively engaged in professional development. So please continue to share your photos and thoughts by adding them to the comments or the chat box, or by emailing them to americanenglishwebinars@fhi360.org. We may feature one of your comments or photos in the next session. Throughout Series 11, we're exploring themes like topics in classroom management for in-person, online, or hybrid courses, as well as innovative approaches to teaching grammar through games, arts, and movement. So we hope you'll be able to use the practical ideas we share. And here's a little bit about what to expect today. Each session is about 60 minutes long. The presenter will present the material, and I, as your host, will ask questions and make comments too. But we really hope to hear from you, our audience, so that we can address your ideas and experiences. So please do share your thoughts using the comments feature or chat box. Our presenters may suggest options for materials or tools during today's session or other sessions. We want you to know that the U.S. Department of State's Office of English Language Programs does not necessarily endorse these resources, though we do hope you get some great ideas today. When our session comes to a close in about an hour, you'll have an opportunity to receive your digital badge. At the end of the webinar, we will share a link in the comments and the chat box. Click on that link and complete a short quiz about today's session. You must answer 2 out of 3 multiple choice questions correctly. And once you've successfully done so, you can expect to receive your badge via email within about a week. And finally, I want to remind you that it isn't too late to join our free assessment or English for Media Literacy for Educators massive open online courses. You can see the course dates for each free MOOC on the slide, and the information and enrollment links are being shared now in the chat and comments. We hope you'll participate in these excellent professional development opportunities. And now for today's session. Motivating with gamification, benefits and cautions. Language teachers have long used games, but gamification, the use of game elements in non-game settings, is more recent. This session starts with a brief overview of gamification, including insights from psychology and research about motivational benefits and risks to avoid. Next, we will examine approaches to gamification in face-to-face and online classes, with ways to include gamification elements in ELT instruction. We will review sample lesson plans to help you develop ways to use gamification in your own classrooms. And now we're pleased to introduce our presenter, Dr. Deborah Healy. An online and face-to-face teacher and teacher educator, Deborah writes and presents globally on pedagogy and appropriate use of technology in language teaching. She was the 2019 to 2020 president of TESOL International Association, and she is a contributor to 2 TESOL Technology Standards publications, as well as the TESOL Encyclopedia of English Language Teaching and the Routledge Handbook of Language Learning and Technology. Having used games extensively in her teaching, she began researching gamification and gamifying her online and face-to-face courses in 2015. She finds the psychology of gameplay fascinating, especially in teaching and learning. Welcome, Deborah. It's so great to have you here with us today.
Yeah, it's great to be here. And thank you all for coming. I'm delighted to see so many people from various parts of the world. And I'm especially happy to be exploring one of my favorite topics with you, motivating with gamification. It's something that I've been working with for a few years now, and there's so much that I learn each time. There are more possibilities. The Ning has additional resources for you. We're going to be trying something here. We're going to be gamifying our webinar. This should help give you some ideas about how to gamify in your classes, as well as a bit of the game feeling that you want to encourage. How? Well, we'll be changing vocabulary to begin with, plus using points and levels. We'll be using our virtual binoculars to look further and decide where to go, like the person in this photo. So here is our first vocabulary change. Maybe you've played adventure-style games that had quests. A quest is a large task. We'd probably call it a project in the classroom. As part of our gamified webinar, you can choose your quest. Here are 3 choices for you. The basic quest is to explain how to gamify a class to a colleague. The intermediate quest is to gamify a regular activity or a project in your class. And the advanced quest is to gamify your whole class more effectively. And you probably won't complete your quest today, but I hope you'll be well on your way with a map for gamifying. Let's look at the plan for our webinar, how we'll work through our quest. We'll start by defining gamification, then think about why to gamify in English language teaching. We'll discuss how to get started and look at specific ways to gamify some of our activities. And of course, you will be earning points with tasks, with challenges as you engage in our quest. As the first step in our gamified webinar, please take a piece of paper and draw a grid that has 2 rows and 8 columns. This will be your scorecard, so you can chart your progress. Gamification is all about showing progress. This is something that helps our language learners become motivated and stay motivated. Now, you're going to start by giving yourself an alias, a fake name. When you do this with your students, you'll want fake names for class sharing. As the teacher, though, you will need to know their real names. But for interacting with others, they'll use their player name. Please add headings to 2 columns, startup and engagement. Okay, Kate, what's your alias?
Well, I don't know if you can see it here, but my alias is Webinar Queen.
All right. So this is a very good, name to use, of course. Now, if you, I see somebody with Winter Fairy, many different names. It's part of the game feeling that you develop by having a player name. Now, if you created a scorecard with your alias, give yourself 100 points in the startup column. As we go through the talk, you will add points for different activities. I'll tell you when. So keep filling out your scorecard, and it's not too late to make your table and your with 8 columns and put in your alias. Okay, ready? Let's get going. Here we have some school children, 2 young children bent over a book together, intently reading, another child intent on writing in the next row. Think for a moment about the feeling these children who are so focused on their work seem to have. And how about you? Have you ever felt focused like this person aiming an arrow at a target, so deeply engaged, perhaps with a game that you didn't want to stop? If you have, think about what you were doing. Just reflect for a moment. And here we have 3 boys dressed as young Buddhist monks, intently gazing at a small phone or tablet screen. One holds the device and all 3 are deeply engaged. Please think about your students. Have they seemed this fully engaged in a classroom activity? What was that classroom activity? Please respond in the chat about what deeply engaged your students or you, the chat or comments on Facebook.
Yeah, let us know what activity might have engaged your students so fully, maybe like these students or the students in the previous pictures. What do you think? And I see lots of great alias names. I love it. So what kinds of activities or what activity are students really engaged in? So David says, guess who? Great.
Buying and selling
when
clothes.
They were face to face, there was an activity where they brought clothes to sell and buy. They loved that. That's so cool, Naomi. Great idea. What else? I'm looking over here on Facebook. When you offer points for correct answers from Nelida. When Mauricio made a rally game, they were very engaged. Great. And Carol says playing Kahoot. So, and Abril says including debates and competitions. That's when her students have been engaged. So those are great examples. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, so this is great because the idea of engagement or flow, as it's called in the game world, is not new to us or in teaching. It's one of the benefits, though, we hope to gain from gamification. If you're just joining us, please create a table on a piece of paper with your alias, not your name, 2 rows, 8 columns. Did you respond in the chat about your students or yourself and engagement? If you did, give yourself 50 points in the engagement column on your table. You can create your table and add your comments in the chat and comments now, too. The gamified environment encourages people to keep trying. Congratulations, you've reached your first milestone, level 1. You're leveling up. So far, we've used different vocabulary and added points and levels, but what is gamification? It's not the same as playing games in the classroom. Here's a definition based on CAP's 2012 Gamification of Learning and Instruction. Gamification is adding elements of games and gaming to regular activities that we don't normally think of as games. It's not adding games, it's adding motivational elements. This is giving the classroom environment a different feel. Let's look at a few places where we're seeing gamification in today's life. Business was one of the first places to jump on gamification. They want you to come and come back to shop some more. Are there places where you shop that give points or rewards, maybe with a special card? Are you more likely to shop there again? Many people are motivated by points and rewards for shopping or travel, so this is very popular in business. And in training, gamification is very common now in training settings because it seems to work to help people remember important things. Examples might be new employee training or learning how to operate complicated equipment. People in training sessions are motivated by gamification to perform correctly, a kind of habit formation. And now in education. Well, in education, we have the idea of motivating and engaging learners and encouraging persistence in our learners. All right, but what does it look like? There are 3 main elements of games that we can use, again, from CAP. The first and probably most obvious element consists of what are called game mechanics. The points, badges, levels, scoring, progress chart, team play. There are many of these, and we'll talk more about these later. The second area is aesthetics. It's a visually or otherwise interesting environment that creates a different feel to the activity. I mean, you might enjoy Candy Crush, but it's more obvious in role-playing games like World of Warcraft, for example. Aesthetics might not be so much part of teachers' use of games, but setting the feeling of a game space is important in gamification. And then the third element is game thinking. I mean, this includes competition, cooperation, exploration, and storytelling. Game thinking is very much related to aesthetics, the feeling of being in a game. It's also different from, let's turn to page 23. Game thinking puts activities into a game context. Learners can move, we hope, from extrinsic motivation and points to seeing themselves succeed, and thus to intrinsic motivation, learning English because they want to learn, because they feel successful as learners. They and their teachers are thinking differently. Now,
Great, and we have one quick nice comment from Micah, who just says, the badges we earn from these webinars are a type of gamification, right? And I think, yes, definitely. And thanks for that great comment, Micah.
Indeed, indeed, very good. So, along the same lines, we often think of students sitting quietly at a desk, working, waiting for class to end. There's a different feel when we think of students as active players, like a goalie jumping and reaching to catch the ball. Click. Thank you. Rather than passive students, they are active players in a game, in a gamified environment. So this name makes a difference in attitude. To see about this, let's start by thinking about when you think of the word students, what adjectives come to mind? Please write some adjectives that come to mind when you think about students in the chat or comments. So students are...
Yeah, share 3 adjectives to describe students, everybody. What do you think? So you can do something similar to the prompt here. Students equal, or students are 1, 2, 3. 3 adjectives. Let's see. Talkative, active, crazy from Truth. Very nice. What else? Hardworking, kind, and amazing. Great. Curious, busy, and naive. Okay, great one. What else do we have? What other words would you just use to describe students? Let's see. Dynamic, creative, and intelligent. Energetic, sharp, and challenging. Awesome, creative, and sometimes bored or lost, definitely. Curious, troublemakers from Elvira. All right, great, everybody. Thanks for those responses.
Yeah, and clearly some of your adjectives will depend on the age of your learners, whether they're young learners or teens or adults. Let's now think about players. When you say the word player, what do you think about? What's a player? Please now take a moment and write in the chat or in the comments 3 adjectives for players.
Yeah, how would you describe players, everybody? Same thing again here. So write players equal or players are, let's see, agile, team players, and strong. Great. Strong, fast, and energetic. Awesome. What other words would you use to describe players? Sportsman spirit, energetic, and passionate. Very nice. Let's take a look. Clever, impressive, and moody. Happy, creative, intelligent, focused, dedicated, and energetic. So those are all wonderful adjectives, everybody. Thank you for sharing.
So Kate, do you have some of the same ideas?
Yeah, I think I would think very similarly, probably thinking more of active adjectives or adjectives for players like fast, strong, and independent, and maybe different ones for students. So yeah, I see what you mean here. These words really do make a difference.
Yeah, so this is, when you use different words, you get different pictures in your mind and different feelings. Now, let's go on to the next slide. And if you're just joining us, please create a table on a piece of paper with a fake name, not your real name, 2 rows, 8 columns, and call one column adjectives. Did you respond in the chat or comments with adjectives about students and players? If you did, in the adjectives column, give yourself 30 points for each adjective you added in the chat, a maximum of 240 points. And did you notice this was a vocabulary activity? If you saw any adjectives that were new for you or unusual, in class, you could have the writers explain the new words. We did a regular classroom type activity, but we added points to it. We're also working toward leveling up. And if you haven't added your words yet, you can add them now. It's not too late to get your points. All right, so we've defined gamification, adding elements of games and gaming to regular activities that we don't normally think of as games. Next, I'm going to talk about why you might want to gamify your English language class. So let's think about our students. In general, students are gamers. They play video games, online games, sports, stuff on their phones, stuff outside. So our learners use game as a verb, inside and outside, like these children ready to play soccer. And even adults enjoy different games, maybe on a computer and maybe not. In the classroom, we can talk about what game developer Jane McGonigal calls hard fun. Hard fun are things like playing chess, or maybe enjoying reading a dictionary like the girl in this photo is doing. And there are actually some of our learners who would enjoy that kind of reading too. But we can add game elements to all kinds of regular classroom activities, things that we know are useful, like learning vocabulary, but that might not be very motivating. Students can also work together as a team on a challenging assignment, perhaps project-based learning. You have teamwork quests and you can give points. And I'll talk more about more game elements later too. And the third big reason is that gamification gives a sense of progress. This is very important, that learners are always moving up. Everyone starts at 0. This is a key feature of gamifying, and it's what got me interested initially. When you have grades, your students come to class the first day and they're thinking, I'm going to do well, I'm an A student, I'm okay. And if you're like me, you might have a few superstars in class who always do a perfect or near perfect job. They're not most students though. I mean, I try to keep my superstars challenged, but I don't worry about them. They will be okay. Most students, the ones I worry about, are the ones who would like to do well, but they might need more help to stay motivated, to get motivated and stay motivated to succeed. If you're one of these students, you come into class thinking you've got an A, and then with every assignment, every quiz, every test, they realize they're not A students. They didn't do a perfect job. They see themselves doing worse. I mean, if they're your star students, no problem, but most learners need to feel they can succeed. When you're moving up in points, you can feel successful. And points do eventually turn into grades, since most of us need to give grades. And I'll talk more about that later too. Think about your students now. Would making your classroom more game-like help motivate them? What about using points that always go up, but that do eventually become grades? Please add some ideas in the chat.
Yeah, please let us know your ideas about this concept of gamification and making your class more game-like. Do you think it would motivate your students? And if you do think so, let us know how it would motivate them. We would love to hear your ideas now that we've gotten a really good idea of what gamification is, what it looks like, and how we can use it in the classroom. I know we're going to get even more examples coming up here. So let's see. Mauricio says, sorry, the comments go so fast. More game-like would mean we always will be playing games and our students will really like it. Let's see. Elvira says it'll help students to set their own goals. That's great. And it will help students to participate more in class from Truk. Erica says, yes, because it somehow imitates the world that they have when they're playing video games. That's a great point. And it helps them to remember more vocabulary from Irving. And it's what students want from Sala. So those are all great concepts and ideas. Thanks everybody for sharing.
All right. Thank you so much. Great ideas. Now, if you're just joining us, please create a table on a piece of paper with your alias, not your name, 2 rows, 8 columns. If you responded in the chat or comments with whether or not you think gamification might work for your students, give yourself 50 points in the Why Gamify column. And if you've been active so far, you are now at level 2. You've leveled up already. Okay, so put in your scores. We've talked about how to define gamification and how using game elements can motivate students to succeed and to persist. Now, let's look at how to start to gamify your classroom and make classroom activities more game-like. Let's start by planning. Gamification doesn't need to be complicated. Here are 5 steps to start with in planning, and we'll look at them one by one next. You're going to decide how much you're going to gamify. You're going to calculate some of the points. You're going to think about achievements, find epic meaning, and rename. So let's look at each of these in turn. The first step is to decide if you want to begin by gamifying one element of the course, such as a skill area, or the whole course. You can go either way, but be consistent. If you're doing one skill area, such as reading or vocabulary or grammar, be sure to gamify it consistently. Use points that move up, have levels, show progress, and that sort of thing. You can also choose to gamify a project-based learning element of your class, or you can do the whole course. If you're doing the whole course, or any aspect of this really, you'll need to plan ahead. So planning is important. And then here's an example of how you might gamify vocabulary and show progress. The students are earning points each week on vocabulary quizzes, and maybe they get other collaboration points if they work with others. You can give extra points if they suggest vocabulary, or maybe if they create a drawing for a vocabulary item that they share. Progress display is an important game element. Progress is visual in some way. This is a chart of vocabulary test scores. Some weeks are better than others, but there's not a sense of getting better overall. For example, with this weekly word quiz, the student might get 12 the first week, 16 the second week, 13 the third week, 19 the fourth week. You're taking quizzes, but it doesn't really feel like progress. On the other hand, we've still got in the little weekly chart, but what we've added is the total words gotten correct. So if you're looking at the total words, each week your player sees progress. She's getting better. Because week 1, you have 12 points, week 2, 28 points, week 3, 41 points, week 4, 60 points, and so forth. You can create this kind of chart with reading speed, vocabulary quizzes, grammar quizzes, and other repeated types of activities. Language teaching doesn't always give learners a good sense of progress. Learners don't often know where they are in their move toward language acquisition. But with this sort of chart, you really see that you're getting better. And this is another way that points can be more powerful than grades. For your second step, you probably don't need a calculator just yet, but you do need to make some decisions about points as a second step. Think about what's important. Harder assignments should be worth more. You can decide if you just want to work with experience points, XPs for short, or if you'd like to add other kinds of points. I used CPs, collaboration points, because I wanted to encourage collaboration among my learners. You can choose to give points for behavior or any other aspect of your class that you would like to encourage. You need to make sure that you can't finish the course just through points. You may need to add additional requirements like projects. Let me give you an example from one of my classes. Now, in my computer-assisted language learning course for master's students, we had online discussions with XPs, experience points for posts. People were also expected to comment on what at least 2 other people had posted. This was collaboration, so comments got CPs, collaboration points. But in different tasks had different XPs, different experience points. But in class, people could get CPs for group work and for helping other people. So if they collaborated, they got collaboration points. I made a mistake the first time I gamified my class with master students. I had only points needed to complete to pass the course. As we got into about week 4 of 11, I realized that some people might be able to get enough points to pass the class without doing the major assignments, the quests of creating a website and writing a reflection on the course. Oops. So I added these requirements just in time. I also didn't use high numbers, mostly because it was easier for me to calculate 10s, 20s, and 30s, but you could. Remember, you don't need to use just experience points. You are in charge of the learning space, and you can choose the kinds of points you also give. So you can have parallel points. The third consideration.
Oh, sorry, just really quick, because I thought that was really interesting. It was so great to hear the example of that first mistake. We all start new strategies and sometimes make little mistakes. And we have sort of a related question from KG. She just wanted to know if the gaming point system ever negatively affects adult learners who don't earn that many points, and if there's anything we can do to avoid that.
Yes, this is a really good question. And it's a good question because part of what you do in a game is you can recover. And so in gamification, you're trying to make your class so that it's possible for people to recover. You offer additional tasks, additional challenges, additional things to do so that people can make up points. It's also, and I'm going to talk more about this later too, for people who are used to getting 100s and A's, you have to keep reassuring them that they are doing well. You're doing very well. You're getting the maximum number of points because they really want to see those hundreds. But as I said before, if you've got these superstars, they need the challenge, and you give them more challenge, but they don't need motivation to continue. They're going to succeed because they're superstars. And it's the other adult learners who can see they're falling behind, but you give them an opportunity to make up that. And this becomes a very powerful tool to encourage adult learners.
Wonderful. Thank you for that response.
So let's go on to achievements. With achievements, you want to get, you have levels and badges. So levels should come from more than one activity. As you saw so far, you are in level 2 after 4 activities. You can choose how you'll do the levels. You can use points to determine levels. You might use a textbook unit for a level. You can have specific skills, say if you could recite the alphabet as a level. Levels are cumulative. You always earn them one by one. Level 1, level 2, level 3, etc. It's like points going up. Now, badges are visible rewards for specific areas that you would like to encourage. You can give badges for achieving a certain number of points, for example. And I was sort of surprised when I started to gamify my class. I thought, badges, will my adult learners like them? Well, they did. People like badges. But you need to be sure, though, that they're given for authentic achievement. If you use rewards in a way that feels controlling rather than as rewards for interesting achievement or authentic achievement, doesn't work well to motivate teen and adult learners. They feel used and controlled rather than motivated. There are websites that let you create badges for free. Two of these, the Expert badge and Simpatico badges. Expert was for 350 XPs, and Simpatico was for 120 CPs, so collaboration points, are from this online badge maker. But one of the people in my class decided to get some additional CPs by creating new badges. Those are the more interesting assistant badge for XPs and the sunshine badge that you'll see here. You'll see the link at the end, and there are also links in the resources to all of these. Now, the fourth consideration is epic meaning. When you think about video games, you can save the world, rescue your friends, defeat the zombies or monsters. It is a major or epic achievement. Epic meaning is important. Now, in our classes, we're probably not the Avengers, but we can do things that go beyond the classroom. In this next photo, we have a boy interviewing his grandmother, maybe creating a life story about an elder for the community. Her story would not be preserved without his action, so it's epic, it's important. Project-based learning is perfect for gamification since it has epic meaning with a large project that gets shared outside the classroom, as well as work parties, teams, and different stages that can serve as levels. The final consideration is an easy one. Renaming is an easy way to get a game feeling in the class. We talked about quests at the beginning of this talk and levels, and there are more ways to use game language in the classroom, like changing an assignment into a challenge. So let's look at changing names next. Sometimes all it takes is a change in terms. On the left side, you see a list of game mechanics and vocabulary from gaming. On the right side is a list of terms we use in teaching. Now, think about it. Just think, don't share yet. And for the next 2 minutes, on your own paper, not in the chat, please, hold this to yourself, write the ones that match. Don't spoil the fun. Don't tell other people the answers. Okay, just keep it on your own. Okay. So,
all right, guys. Yeah, grab that piece of paper you have handy, if you can see mine, and write the answers down, or you can just think of them too, but please try your best not to write them in the chat. We know it's so tempting to do that. We'll give you a couple of minutes to write your answers. So you're matching the game mechanics list with its equivalent in the teaching list. So,
and you'll see the first one is done for you, party or team. Number 1 is A, group work.
All right, so continue on with that and see if you can get all of these correct. I wonder if there will be any points involved if you get some of these correct.
I wonder, could it be?
All right, Deborah. What do you think? Have we given them enough time?
I think so. So let me tell you what the answers are, and you can correct yourself and notice how many you got right. So what we had from before was number 1, party or team, is group work, A. Number 2, experience points are grading, C. So it's 2C, but remember that points go up from 0, so they're a bit different. A quest, number 3, is E, a large project, often at the end of a course. And number 4, level, is D, a unit. Successfully completing any topic can be achieving a level, but remember, levels also go up. And number 5, badges are B, stars, awards, and such. Badges are so common in gamification, very, very common. And finally, games constraints number 6 is class rules. No, letter F, there are always rules. Games always have rules and our classes have rules. Now, we use all of these elements, but they're not visibly part of a system. Putting them into this system, this game world, and making students into active players can make a difference. And again, remember that XPs count up. Please count how many you got right. And in the game mechanics column, put 30 points for each correct match. The 180 points, or if you got all 6, add 70 points for a total of 250 points. Notice that you got credit for the free first answer. Something for nothing is a game mechanic called free lunch, and people love a free lunch. If you scored at least 60 points on this and you were at level 2 before, go up to level 3. Now, in class, as I mentioned before, you would make sure that your players could earn points as if they started falling behind. And when you provide more than one way to learn and more than one way to demonstrate proficiency, you are differentiating instruction. This is a good thing to do with or without gamification. You notice this was another vocabulary activity. We worked individually, but this type of activity can obviously also be used in pairs or a team. Now, let's recap the 5 planning steps and make sure you're going to do this while you're planning your syllabus before you get to class. You're going to decide part of the course or the whole course, calculate points for assignments, think about what your achievements will be, the levels and the badges, find epic meaning, something really big and important, and rename quests, tasks, challenges, so many ways. All right. Now you're ready to bring students into your gamified environment. If you've done the basics, the next steps can go smoothly. You'll need to explain that you're creating a gamified environment. Now, if you're working with very young learners, they don't need much explanation. They love play. Your classes are very playful. This will feel like play. For teens and adults, though, this will be a big change from what they expect from schooling. So you're going to be explaining what you're doing and why you're doing it, because it's motivating, because people like games, and it's a game feeling. Points will be one of the most obvious differences for your players. You'll need to decide what the points will mean in terms of grades, if you have to give grades, because your super achievers will want to know. But you can explain that. And also remember that you can give different kinds of points. I had 2 kinds of points, and people had to earn a certain level in both in order to pass my class. You can make that choice. And then there are badges, of course. There are the free badge making sites that I mentioned in the resources on the Ning, or you can create your own. I had badges for XPs, for CPs, for levels, and for completing quests. As I mentioned before, one of my players got extra points for creating badges for the class. You show your players what they can earn as visible achievements. And if you're not very artistic, like me, definitely think about asking your players to create interesting badges. You get much more interesting results than the ones that you see that I've created here. The other step is to start using game language consistently. Talk about quests and challenges, teams and parties, plus some of the game mechanics that we're going to see in the next section. So far we have defined gamification, the use of game elements in non-game contexts, like school. We've talked about the motivation and persistence we can get by gamifying our classes. And I've mentioned a few ways to get started. Now we are on the fourth leg of our journey, and we'll be looking at some specific activities and how those could be gamified. All right, we're going to be looking at 4 sample activities, and I'll talk about these more in detail in a moment. Think about whether these will work in your classroom, how you might adapt them, and what else you might try. The 4 options we're going to take a look at more closely are memorizing vocabulary, a weekly crossword puzzle, spelling competition, and watching and responding to a video. All right, let's start with vocabulary. I mean, we talked about vocabulary earlier in looking at progression. As you may recall, you can not just add the number correct per week, but the total over time. And with total over time, it's going up. There's a clear sense of progress. But we have a few more game mechanics we can add. You can add community collaboration, teamwork, pair or group work, where your players can quiz each other with flashcards. You can have challenge, where you see how well you do and you celebrate their success. Points, of course, and then ownership is a great one to add. It's a big part of games. Your players can create the flashcards. The more artistic ones can contribute images for flashcards and the quiz. You can even have them suggest words. If you guarantee that some of the student suggested words will be on the quiz, there will be a lot of sharing and your players will be learning from each other. If we go to a weekly crossword puzzle, the things that you might add would be countdown. This is like a time limit, but be careful with this. This won't work well with everyone, and be sure you're being equitable if you have a time limit. If you're going to use a time limit, it's better with pair or small group work because that's community collaboration, and then it's less stressful for people who might be less proficient than others. Obviously, you'll have points. There's achievement, completing the puzzle, sharing the results with others. Ownership is another one that you can add here, where players are contributing words and definitions. You can have an image-based crossword puzzle where your graphical learners can add images, or they can just benefit from associating images with words. And progression, like with vocabulary, anything that you do regularly can be charted to show improvement. How many total correct over time? So this is a nice way to use crossword puzzles in a gamified way. If we move on to spelling, you can have a spelling competition instead of the usual individual competition. Think about doing teamwork, community collaboration. You might have a lifeline concept. Your team can give a hint if you're stuck, but your team has only, say, 2 or 3 hints that they can give. You've got achievement. If your players are in teams, there's less hurt in losing and more achievement in winning. You're not gone after the first round because you misspelled the first word. You're still there, and so you can achieve with your team. You've got points for words spelled correctly, and maybe more points if your team didn't use all the hints. And then with ownership, again, let your learners suggest words. They're certainly going to be telling each other the words and practicing them with each other. And finally, we have listening in video. And most of us do this, right? It could be an audio clip rather than video. Your players might be working alone, like the person in the photo, but there are other options. Working in teams becomes community collaboration. This is especially good with discussion questions. Think about points and things that might not just be for quizzes. If someone is actively helping others, for example, somebody who's really good with video, then that's an opportunity for collaboration points. You can give points for participating in discussions and quizzes, of course. with ownership, if your players generate the questions, they feel a sense of ownership. And like I said before, if you say you're going to use some of their questions on the tests and quizzes, you will get a lot of sharing. They will do the work of helping prep each other, so you don't have to. Now, student-created video is especially powerful in quite a few ways. Ownership is obviously very strong. Creating a video is challenging. And now that you can create video on mobile phones, it's really accessible to a whole lot of people. But you do need to plan ahead, especially if you're trying to do it on a phone. When you've created a video and shared it with the class, you have a sense of achievement. You've created something. An epic meaning can come in here too. If your players are creating a video project that takes place outside the classroom, maybe a video of places they love in their neighborhood or of a family member telling a story, this is way bigger than something that's just within class, that they're sharing in class. And if it can then be shared publicly on YouTube or a school video channel, it's really epic, something that goes way beyond the normal activities to become epic. Well, this was, only four, only 4 activities, but lots of possibilities. And I bet you can think of even more ways to add different mechanics and gamify your classes. So please, in the chat or comments, share some activities you might use from this list, or maybe some new ones that this has made you think about, and whether you think you can use these activities to gamify your class.
I love the activities you shared with us, Deborah, because they're things that we often do in our classrooms, but these are just the activity titles or the names of the activities, but there are ways to gamify them. So just as another quick reminder, gamifying your classroom is not quite the same as adding games. It's adding game-like elements to activities that you're already doing. So what would you do in your classroom? Would you try one of the activities that Deborah shared? Would you try something new? What do you think, everybody? We'd love to hear from you. Share some of your ideas. Let's see, Micah says, I was thinking I would try gamifying my weekly verb quizzes. I think my students would really go for it and learn a lot more. James says the crossword puzzle is a good idea. Roger wants to try the spelling activity. Mina says that she'll try to create videos to boost students' sense of creativity. Memorizing vocabulary for a weekly puzzle with Adita. That's great. That sounds fun. I'm going to start gamifying activities first to master how to do it. That's a good idea before doing the whole class. Awesome. Wonderful ideas, everyone. Thanks.
All right. Excellent. And I'm sure there are more ways. And remember, it's adding game elements, as Kate was saying, not just playing games. So you've got making it feel like a game in your class. Now, guess what? You're going to add a column called action to your scorecard. If you responded in the chat about what you will do, give yourself 50 points if you're thinking about one of the previous ideas, 100 points for a new idea, and 200 points if you're thinking about gamifying your course. Whoa, so many possibilities. Now, if you responded in the chat or comments and you were at level 3 before, you're now at level 4. You have leveled up once again. All right. Well, we're coming to the end now. What do you think about gamifying? Have you made progress on your quest? Are you able to explain how to gamify to a colleague? Are you ready to try gamifying an activity in your class or gamifying your whole class more effectively? Feel free to post what you're thinking about in the chat or comments.
Yeah, everyone, we've gotten so many great ideas and we've learned so much about how to gamify our lessons or classrooms. What do you think? What do you think you're ready for? Are you ready for the basic, intermediate, or advanced level of gamification? And all answers are correct answers. Don't worry. So let's see. Galaxy says the whole class. So the advanced, you might want to try gamifying your whole class. Awesome. Let us know how it goes. Truk says intermediate. So does Noemi. Diana says intermediate. Faro says advanced. Lupita says intermediate. Adita says intermediate. One person says, I have to plan and then I'll carefully see how it goes. Great idea. And Hector says intermediate. So lots of different folks deciding on lots of different levels, and that all sounds really great. We're excited to hear how it goes in your classrooms, everybody.
Yeah, okay, so now back to your scorecard. You'll add a column called check-in and give yourself 50 points just for getting to the end of the webinar. This is called a free lunch. You've arrived at the end and you get 50 points just for being here. You can feel free to share your final total in the chat if you'd like. You would use something like this scorecard to record the points that your players earned. And please keep in mind that it's only helpful to see everyone's score if everyone can have a sense of success. And if you do share scores, let your players use an alias, use a player name rather than their real name. One more thing to remember about gamification: people get second chances in a game. Make sure you provide a way for those who are far behind to catch up by doing extra work. If the extras are enjoyable and lead to a reward, like a level or a badge, this is also very motivating. All right, look down from the top of your climb. As you may recall, I'm from Oregon, so I do a lot of hiking in the mountains. Feel satisfied, enjoy a sense of achievement, and give yourself a pat on the back with what you've accomplished in your quest. Here are some sample badges that I created with onlinebadgemaker.com. Level 1, the thinker. Level 2, the planner. Level 3, the applier. And level 4, a gamifier. You can create badges like these for your players. And you should be able to download these badges from the resources page for this presentation. And here are a few of the references you might find useful. These and more on the resources page in the Ning. And you can find links to this information and more on my website, deborahhealy.com.
Thank you so much, Deborah. That was such a great webinar. I see tons of people saying how much they loved it. Lots of thank yous. Thanks, great ideas. Thank you, it was perfect. I love it, from Andre. Thank you, Miss Deborah, for sharing your expertise, from Michael, and many, many more. So thank you so much. What a wonderful webinar. Yeah, it was really a clear definition that you gave us of the concept of gamification, and you also shared a lot of practical ideas that we can all use in our classrooms for gamifying aspects of our classes. And as always, we'd like to thank you, our audience, for your engagement and participation today. Please continue to share your thoughts, comments, and ideas here in the chat box or comment section, and also on our Ning or with your viewing groups after today's session ends.